Sentimental Value is about an estranged father and daughter who just happen to be a movie director and a stage actress, possibly reconnecting after the death of the mother. This is another 2025 movie with a ton of buzz, so let's take a look at some generational trauma. Welcome everyone to Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Your movie is a Netflix release. Is it going to hit theaters?
This is a movie podcast. We are working through a 2025 season where we're reviewing a bunch of different films that have got some critical acclaim from last year. And today we're looking at Sentimental Value, a Norwegian film, which I actually got a little confused at one point because Stellan Skarsgård's in this, and I'm like, isn't he Swedish? And to be fair, he does mention in the movie that his character's father is Swedish, so I think this is a case of some cross-pollination going on, but...
I mean, even just the beginning of the movie, you hit the production logos, and it's like all of Europe was involved in making this film.
Oh, sure. Europe's a bit of a melting pot, it turns out, and it was making me wonder, though, like, how easy is it relative to other languages? If you speak, say, Norwegian, is it to learn Swedish and vice versa? Are they closer, so they're easier to... I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably like I might get crucified for this. I don't know how similar they are, but it seems to me the kind of similarity of like Spanish to Portuguese. Like there's a lot of carryover between the two languages there.
Sure. Yeah, I can see the comparison. Anyway, enough of us being ignorant. We're going to talk about Sentimental Value. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch, and you can support everything over at Patreon or YouTube membership and get some bonuses. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, this is a mostly Norwegian film, and I say mostly just in terms of the language because there is actually an American character in it as well, so there is some English sprinkled in there occasionally. But it is a family drama. It is about a father and two daughters, adult daughters, that is. Stellan Skarsgård playing the father, who is a director, a film director. One of the daughters is an actress. The other one's more of a historian, researcher type job. And the mother of the family, at the start of the film, like, the inciting incident effectively is that she's passed away. And it's kind of, as the title implies, there's a lot of reminiscing, there's a lot of looking to the past and what's going on in this family, and do they have trouble communicating? I'll spoil that. Yes, they do have trouble communicating, and that's a big part of what the movie is. So, that is the basic premise of the film. So, how much of this were you aware of before we went into
Nothing.
it?
Look, I'm not great with keeping up on the modern movie scene already. Add in that this is a foreign film, and I don't think there was any way my stupid American ass was ever going to know this movie existed outside of this season.
Yeah, well, so the director of this one is I'll just scroll up and get his name because I'll never remember it. Joachim Trier is the director, and he made a movie that got a lot of acclaim a few years ago called The Worst Person in the World, and I've not seen that yet, but that was one that got a lot of buzz at the time. I actually was surprised though to find that I had seen another film of his called Thelma from a few years prior to that, which I remember being well directed, but I didn't love it. It was kind of a horror movie, so we did it on Streams After Midnight back in the day, and I was like, oh, I'm surprised I've seen one of this guy's movies, but I have. So it was just interesting getting into this, seeing that he's kind of risen and gotten a lot of cred over the last movie or two that he's made, and this is getting a lot of acclaim. It's up for acting awards and things like that. So I was very curious to dive in and see what it was. So well, I guess without further ado, we'll just get the general impressions out of the way and see how we feel. David, what did you think of Sentimental Value?
I really liked it. I think it was a good... just kind of a personal story. Just it felt very, even if it wasn't something that actually personally came from Joachim Trier or his co-writer, I'm going to butcher this, Eskil Vogt. Both of those, it feels like this is something that comes from a deeply personal place, but even if it doesn't, it has that flair to it. It feels like, you're looking in at these very intimate moments of these people's lives. You're seeing this very confused and out of place sort of emotional state that they're all in, and then how it just slowly evolves from there. And as much as it isn't something that, I don't know, I personally can relate to in a lot of the aspects to it, I think there is something universal to how it is portrayed, the sort of feelings that they go through here. I will say, as much as I did like it from that point of view, it did kind of rub me a little bit the wrong way, especially knowing how much of like an awards darling this movie seems like it's going to be, in that it does focus so much around the idea of like acting and making movies and stuff like that, because that always just feels like a little bit cheap for me, of like, we're making this movie kind of for the Academy. I'm not accusing this movie of doing that, but I always kind of get that feel of, anytime there's a movie about movies, I'm always sitting there like, okay, all right, we get it. So a tiny little thing. It doesn't impact the larger at whole. It's only in the aspect of the award stuff that it gets me. But no, it's a great made film. Cinematography is great. It has a lot of good setup and payoff as well. So I enjoy it. My only thing that I think is going to be an issue is it's, again, one of those movies that I think is going to be really hard to give kind of a breakdown to in the same way we usually do. It's going to be a lot more of vague sort of moments instead.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the thing you just brought up. One, because a big theme of this movie is how someone either hides themselves in art or expresses themselves through art. And, there's a reason for that. And, well, I get the cynicism of, like, the Academy and other award bodies loving movies about movies. Here's the thing about movies about movie making, is that people making movies love movies. So when they make movies about movie making, it tends to be very, very genuine and passionate. So it usually ends up pretty good for the most part, in my opinion, when they do it. No, there's not bad examples, there absolutely is, but there's a reason why a lot of the time it works out, though, is because, yeah, these people love movies. That's why they're making movies. I gotcha. It clicks. I think it's a really solid movie. I think it's got 3 very well developed characters, which was a little bit of a surprise, actually, because I think going into this, it very quickly feels like a 2-person like sort of lead movie, where you've got the main character of Nora, the main daughter. The actress was also in this director's previous film, and you've got Stellan Skarsgård as the father. But I think a pleasant surprise to me is that, while maybe not quite as equal as those two, I do think her sister ends up getting a bit more meaty like stuff in the movie than I thought she was going to. I thought she was going to be like a distant third character, and she's still the third character, but she gets like her own segments in a way that I didn't think she was going to get. So I appreciated them fleshing that out and kind of like tackling that. And there's some stylistic stuff here or there with how it presents certain things. It's funny actually talking about this the week after Train Dreams, because there's a little bit of narration in this, but it's very much only in like 3 segments, and they're very, very like separate from the rest of the movie, and you always feel like you're in one of those segments when it's happening, and then it goes into like the real movie. So there's a real separation between the 2 elements. So all my complaints from Train Dreams of it being a bit too there's just narration constantly explaining things to us. This wasn't quite that. This was it had a different vibe to it. So yeah. So performances were good. Direction was good. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes, so it's a little long, but it's not like super dense or anything.
And I think pacing wise as well, it never feels like it's just dragging its feet to get to that 2-hour mark.
I think the only thing I would say is maybe a little bit of a critique is that I thought the first half hour had a lot of good energy. Like, there was a lot of good energy and like some light comedy kind of sprinkled in, and I think that kind of went away as the movie went on, and I kind of understand why to an extent, because things are getting a bit more serious and we're getting a bit more introspective, so it's not funny anymore. But I actually think if they'd found a way to keep a little bit of that flavour in there, I think I might have been even more enthusiastic about the whole thing by the end. I'm speaking mainly, there's a whole segment at the start when we meet the main character as an adult, and she's like scared to go on stage, and that's all I'll say. But there's a whole like set piece around that's very fun to watch, actually.
Yeah.
So
I get what you're saying, and I understand where it's coming from, but that sort of energy that she was giving off there, I related too much to it. Like, maybe it's because I was in theater, like in high school, but like I had to pause that scene no less than like 6 times to just like get my cringe and my like, oh God, please let this work out. Because if it doesn't, I'm going to be so like empathetically upset with her.
Actually, all I was thinking, during that is the music that plays at the start of it. I was like, this is the music from The Shining. This is The Shining music, and I'm sure
that's where I heard it from. Thank you.
And I'm sure it's a classical piece, or it's maybe already tied to this play or whatever from before. Anyway, it's not originally from The Shining, but in my brain, I hear dun 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 dun, and I'm like, that's The Shining. That's the opening to The Shining. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get more into it when it comes there, but I think that initial one was supposed to be like a previews night or something like that. It was supposed to be like not completely finished in terms of everything else about the show. At least that's the vibe I got. So that might have just been like a placeholder track as they got the actual stuff set in place.
I mean, everything we see her do later is a different play, though. So I don't think this was like her rehearsing or doing like a test night for what she was doing later.
Fair enough, maybe.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the co-writer of this movie, and I clicked on him just to see if is he just worked with this guy before or what. Turns out he actually worked on another movie that I have seen. He wrote and directed a horror film from 2021 called The Innocents, which was very good.
Okay.
So that's just another interesting little connection there. Some of these Norwegian filmmakers are popping up more and more. And it's funny, this is not even the only Norwegian film I've seen in the last couple of months. There's a horror film that came out in 2025 called The Ugly Stepsister, which I highly recommend, from Norway. So the Norway film scene is booming these past few years.
I mean, I'll take it. I as much as I'm not really that exposed to foreign cinema as much as I probably should be, whenever I watch it, it's good. Like, it's usually the stuff that bursts the bubble. So, of course, a little bit of confirmation bias there. But I'm always happy to see other things besides your standard Hollywood flair getting greenlit and sent out to the masses.
Yeah. I feel bad as well. I had to do like a little fact check thing in the middle of this movie because they mentioned, because they go over the family history a little bit, and they mentioned like during the war, like World War II, and I actually had to be like, do you know what? I actually don't know what was going on in Norway in World War II. I'm just going to quickly check. And I'm like, it was Nazi occupied for like most of the World War II. Fair enough, right? That's good to know, right? I have the context now. Okay, back to the movie.
Yeah, because I don't know if it was a subtitle like translation or whatnot, but they specifically mentioned a character being part of the resistance rather than like the other side. Like, resistance implies that things were pretty bad. Yeah,
that's why I fact checked it. I was okay. I don't recall exactly what was going on in Norway during World War II. I have to check that. So, but yeah, good to know. Good to know. So yeah, no, pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the performances are a big thing that are going to be the talking point of this movie. The direction is very good, but I think the performances from the two leads are going to be doing a lot of award season talk, a lot of buzz surrounding them. I am curious. I've not checked, but I do wonder how they're like nominating some of them, because like, I feel like Stellan Skarsgård might be getting a lot of supporting actor nominations, and I'm like, I don't know, he's a co-lead in this movie, but I can smell them trying to like up his chances by saying, well, no, we'll put him in supporting, and he'll outshine all the supporting actors because he's got a meatier role here, but we can kind of justify it because we're saying she's the lead. I don't know,
yeah, I mean, I'll say, is it Renate? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Whatever it is, she's absolutely the lead. Like, I don't think there's any real debate about that. But to say that Stellan is not equal, or at least very close approaching to equal, I would say is doing him a disservice, because he essentially has his own complete story, his own complete arc that is not independent of her, but very close to it.
I mean, there's just entire segments where we'll ignore her for 15, 20 minutes and we'll follow his story. So it feels like, he is just co-lead of the movie. It's something. And then one person we've not mentioned yet too much is Elle Fanning is in here as the standout, because she is an American actress, and she's played an American actress in the movie. So it feels very true to life almost.
No, there's so much of this where it feels like there is kind of a meta level. Like, at one point we have Elle Fanning saying like, would it be weird that I'm the only one talking in English? Like, everyone else has like this accent. And I'm like, are you just doing like the movie in the movie? Is that what we're doing now? The making of the movie is the movie?
Yeah. Well, no, because like in the movie that they're making in the movie, she's supposed to be part of a family in Norway, which is why it would be weird.
Right.
So in the movie we're watching, it makes sense why she's speaking in an American accent.
Yeah. There's just little throwaway lines like that I'm like, all right.
That said, though, I have to imagine the idea that she wants to work with this acclaimed director from Norway is based on some truth. Like, why is she in this movie? Probably because she likes this other guy's previous movies and is like, hey, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just clicking into Stellan to see like nominees wise. So he does have the supporting actor for the Academy Awards. So definitely that one. I'm trying to get to like BAFTAs and stuff. Supporting actor.
I'm calling bullshit in that, not because he doesn't deserve the nom, but because he should really be in, lead role.
Yep.
But
every single thing is saying supporting role. Yeah, no, he should have been an actor.
I told you, I could smell it. I could smell it a mile off.
Yep.
So yeah. Also, weird bit of trivia I learned about the Fanning sisters is they both really, really, really think Jack Black is sexy. It's a weird bit of trivia for you, but have with that what you will.
I mean, no, I don't get it. I was gonna say like, I guess I could see something, but no, like sexy as the describing word is not there.
I believe that I was watching one of those stupid YouTube things, like one of these, I think it was Variety or one of them, but they do like a lie detector thing, so they were asking each other questions with a lie detector test, and they put out a photo of Jack Black, and they're like, oh yeah, he's sex on legs, I can't even look at it, I'll get too distracted, and they're both just like, I don't know, I'm like, either this is a very elaborate bit that they've both committed to, or like something's going on in that family where they're all just thinking Jack Black's the sexiest man alive.
I don't understand it at all, but I'll take your word for it.
I don't know, because I forgot she was in this, and as soon as she popped up, I was like, oh yeah, it's the Jack Black stalker. That was the first thought I had in my head.
I like to imagine, like, there's always the stories of fans who like really are like super creepily dedicated to celebrities, but I'd like to imagine there's at least a few of those that are like celebrity to celebrity. Where there's just like someone who also hit it big that's also just like, oh my god, I would like worship you, and the other somebody's like, we're working together in like 2 months, can you tone it down?
Yeah, anyway, just a weird bit of trivia I wanted to interject.
I'm sorry, I just googled sexy Jack Black to see if it would come up, and none of these are sexy. Absolutely, I don't get any of them. Oh,
you were looking for sexy Jack Black photos is what you were looking for. Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to
I know. I thought you were maybe like fact checking that. Oh, they said this or something. But no, you're just looking for the photos.
I don't doubt that they said it. I'm just trying to see what they see.
We can't. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We can't possibly fathom that. That's
yeah.
So yes, I know. I think one of the other things that the movie does is that you have these segments where it does like the history of the house, because the house is also kind of a central character almost in the movie, which like the family home the grandparents or great grandparents had, and it was passed down each generation. So there's a lot of history in the house, and notably when it films these sequences, it does this thing where it doesn't necessarily focus on the faces. It'll focus on the like the feet running down the stairs, because that's what the house feels. The house feels the feet going down the stairs. As stupid as that may sound, it makes sense with the narration that's happening in the moment, and it all comes together.
Yeah, I will say that opening bit, and kind of once you said there's history segments as well, I was almost at a certain point expecting this movie to be told more asynchronously, like jumping through different periods of this entire family rather than sticking with this like group that we have core here. Once I got it. Like, it's not like I was constantly expecting it, but I'd say first like 20 minutes, I was still expecting it to like jump back to what did the grandmother do in this house? Like, tell me about this great grandfather who died there, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's some relevant history of like, particularly of Stellan Skarsgård's mother. Like his character's mother is heavily discussed in like what her history was, and that's the stuff that ties into World War II. So there's a lot going in there.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of this movie, without spoiling too much about it, is just kind of this dive into some level of generational trauma. This level of like you said, you're showing your emotions through your art, but there is this level of not actually talking about it, not actually moving past it, and just kind of using that to fuel the art stuff. And so it is this idea of what happens when you need to talk about it, what happens when we reach that boiling point.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, one of the big things I was thinking about, especially as we got more of who the sister was, who more of Agnes is this idea that Nora has kind of like, and at one point Skarsgård even says to her, you know, I see a lot of me in you, which obviously she doesn't like hearing because she kind of hates him at that point. And I was like, yeah, you're kind of like him because you became an actor, which is not that different to being a director, and you're in the industry, you're making stuff, you're expressing yourself through art, but you're even scared to be a part of that at times because it's too real to feel, you know, hence the opening when she's scared to go on stage. And then Agnes is like the polar opposite, where she's literally researching facts and looking at the history and you know, taking things head on, you know, and I don't want to get too into specific scenes with that yet, but you know, she's directly looking at stuff and feeling the impact of it, and it feels like two extremes, and you know, how maybe they balance each other out in some way, and maybe that's something that Stellan Skarsgård never had because he was an only child. He didn't have like a sibling that was the flip of him kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, going into the without spoiling things, the relationship between the sisters, it definitely is this vibe of they both went through similar things. They went through very much the same events, but there were key differences of how they experienced them, and then it just shows the massive differences that such a small change can really make in the development of them over the years.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say even at this point that the biggest difference for each of them is that one is the older sister and one is the younger sister. So the younger sister felt protected by the older sister, and that's completely changed how she ended up versus the older sister. So it's an interesting examination of the family dynamics and, like you say, the generational trauma that's been passed down, which is interesting because the first movie we did this season, and one battle after another, had some generational trauma going on through it.
It's almost like it's a thing that people are learning they have to deal with at some point.
Yeah, it's almost like how right now a lot of horror movies are all about rich people being killed because we're all in the mood to see rich people be eaten alive. It's almost like there's just something going on there that we're all
I don't know. Into. That seems like a stretch to me. You sure you don't want more AI? I think AI is the thing we should be talking about.
Oh dear. So yeah, I think there's not much more we can say, I don't think, without just getting into the spoilers and really talking about the movie. So if there's anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, you know, this is not, I think, a film for general audiences. This is not a film for someone who wants to sit down and like, oh, I really liked... honestly, though, if you like Chernobyl, you probably would still get Stellan Skarsgård out of this. But, like, you know, I would say your standard person who's like, you know, I saw Elle Fanning on The Great, and I would like some more of that. Like, this isn't that sort of stuff. This is much more in-depth character drama, and the fact that it is primarily in Norwegian is... Obviously, you're going to have to sit there and read the subtitles, which... you know, anyone who's dealt with foreign films is used to, but not a general audience sort of thing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think this is a weird disclaimer, though. I think it's really simple. Are you okay with a foreign film? Yes, you'll probably get into it. If no, then yeah, it's probably too dull for you. Go away.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, okay, some people like foreign action movies and maybe wouldn't watch a drama, but still, I think it's a much simpler litmus test to just... Oh, yeah. Hit with them.
There's so many people who, when, like, you know, when Oscar season rolls around, they want to try to give stuff a shake. They want to say like, oh, this is the thing everyone's talking about, but then it's not something that is living up to their expectations of what a Oscar film should be in some ways. And I just want to make it clear what kind of film it is.
I don't know. Like, let them watch it. Let them try it. Because what's the worst that'll happen? They don't like it. Tough.
Oh, yeah. No, fair, true.
If anything, at least something like this getting nominated for a bunch of stuff means that a lot more people will try it, and hey, maybe some of those people who haven't dove into foreign films before will give them more of a chance because they'll find something they like. I don't think this is a disclaimer we have to give every single time we talk about a foreign film, because you always do this.
I do.
The subtitles, I feel dumb, I have to read the subtitles, where's the explosions?
Yep, that's how I sound. Someone subtitle me because I sound like an idiot.
Alright, spoilers for Sentimental Value. You have been warned. We're going to dive into it. So, where do you want to start?
That's the thing. I don't know. Like, that's what I was saying at the start is I don't this isn't something where it feels like going beat by beat down the movie is going to make a lot of sense. I think it make more sense to do like independent characters, but even then they're so tightly intertwined with each other that like by the time you hit the first intersection point, you got to go back and like say, and here's what that character's been up to in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to start things off, right? So we find out, because we start very much from Agnes' perspective. The opening narration is kind of the narrator talking about how Agnes wrote an essay when she was like really young. She was told to like pick an inanimate object and talk about it as if it's alive, and she picked her house, and that's when we get into like the house. You know,
was that Agnes or was that Nora?
Sorry, that was Nora. Sorry, I just jumped to the wrong name. My bad.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it's Nora, lead character, right?
Yes.
So Nora's talking about the house breathing and how the stomach's rumbling because her and her sister are running down the stairs, and it witnessed all these things, and heavily talks about how there's arguments from the parents coming that eventually led to the dad leaving, and they kind of hide who the dad is, but if you know that he's going to be in it, you can kind of get a sense of who it is, and so on, right? So that's how the movie starts, and that's how we get set up and on our journey, and we skip ahead to her being an actress in a play and avoiding it on stage at every possible juncture. It seems like she wants to have sex with a guy that turns out to be a married man later on, but we don't know that in the scene. She just goes over to him. He's like a stagehand, or he's another actor, and he's backstage. And she's like, "Oh, let's go over here." And he's like, "What? There's no time for that. You're going out. The music's already playing. It's time to go." And she's like, "It doesn't matter." And then when she's like, "All right, well, slap me then. It'll help me get ready." And he's like, "All right," and he slaps her, and then she like walks as if she's going to the stage, and then she says, "Nah, I sod this," and she bolts to the exit, and like the I guess it's the stage manager, whoever, like the blonde lady, is just like freaking the F out. She's got the headset on, and she's like, "Where's she going?" To the point where her and like 3 costuming people have to tackle her while she's ripping the costume in the hallway backstage, and they're having to like tackle her and drag her back to the stage, and like as they're doing this, there's like a costume person like duct taping the costume back together. And the funny thing is that, and I could see it building up to this because it's the funniest thing possible to do, is that when she gets back out on stage finally at the end in front of the audience, there's a pause, and then she just starts acting her ass off, and it's perfect. And it's like, this is just her ritual. She's just like a nervous wreck, but as soon as she gets out there, she's just boom, 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 like, and you cut, smash cut to the end, and everyone's giving her a standing ovation, and she's bowing, and it's like, do you do this every time? Is this like a child going for his dentist appointment? You have to like drag him kicking and screaming, but he gets the lollipop at the end, and he's like, "Oh, lollipop, excellent."
I hope not, because I would hate to work with someone like that. But at the same time, like, you just describing the scene has already given me a bit of anxiety. Like, watching this scene, the moment that, like, I had to pause, and I took, like, a good 5 minutes of, like, I just need to, like, take a second, is as she's, like, running off, she's sprinting down the hallway, they show the stage again. Again, packed house, lights are down, music is playing, and then they have to cut the music. And, like, keep the lights off for a second as everything gets back into place. I'm like, this is a train wreck. Cancel it all. I don't want to see anymore.
Well, in light of that, I would like to announce here that in 2027, the Male Fuzz stage production will be coming to a theatre near you, and David will be doing a one-man show, a monologue.
Yes. It's going to be like Equus. I'm fully nude for half of it.
Yep. And I'm going to be backstage barking orders at everyone and pushing them out onto the stage. It's going to be great. And I'm going to spring surprises on him when he's on stage. I'll bring out his childhood sweetheart when he's naked on stage, and that'll be fun. Yeah, just little things like that.
It's sounding more like an improv show than like a set in stone sort of thing.
I'm thinking more of like a surprise, like Jerry Springer type thing, where your childhood sweetheart comes out with a child, and it's like, "Oh, by the way, David, this 12-year-old's yours."
Yeah. And Jerry Springer, the peak of art, for sure.
No, this is not about art. This is about torturing you. Can you understand that, David?
Damn, sorry. Once again, subtitle me. I'm an idiot. But yeah, no, this sequence, like, it set a good tone. It set a good emotional state for this character, this idea that, like, she is good at what she does. She is very talented here, but there are some deeper underlying issues that need to be addressed because this is not normal. You're putting that as nicely as you possibly can. She is good at what she does, but she's a train wreck is the way I would phrase it. Yes. Trying to be a little bit. That's the other thing. I don't think I think we get it like shortly soon afterwards, but we get a little bit on the backstory of the mother, who I don't think has died at this point, but is very soon to die.
Yeah. We just we skip ahead. We don't really know what the time passage is here, but we just skip ahead to when there's a wake happening for her.
Yeah. And the only thing we get about the mother really is, like we said, there was arguments with the father, but also her job was as a therapist. And so I can't help but think that also played into a little bit of her development, is having a therapist in the house.
Yeah, that's always well stuff. And because we kind of find that out mainly the first time, I think, because she's teaching her nephew. So her sister's got a son named Eric, and she's teaching him that, hey, if you go up to this furnace, you can listen through the vent and you could hear everything that was being said in the therapist office. So she used to listen to her mother talking to her patients, which is wild, because who knows what sort of crazy stuff those patients were saying, like personal adult feelings and thoughts and ideas and all. I shouldn't have said crazy, that's a bit insensitive given they're in therapy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's great material for an actress though. It's fantastic. She gets to hear all this stuff. She's like, oh yeah, this is great backstory stuff.
I can draw in this. This is my my muse. Muse, that's the word I was looking for. My muse, yes. So it sets all this stuff up, and then obviously Stellan Skarsgård shows up at the wake, and immediately, because she actually hears his voice through this vent, and she's like, oh, wait a minute, Dad's here. And it's like, wait, Dad's here, this is a big deal. He wasn't at the funeral. And the dad even says, like, a church? Did she find religion in her last few years? And like, no, we just thought it'd be nice. And it's like, okay, so we're painting a picture of what this household was in time. But the reason why I sort of went through this chunk in order is just to sort of get to this point where they've both been introduced, because now we can really start to talk about how they are with each other. And obviously it's awkward here, they're not really opening up. He does say though that he wants to talk to her soon about something, and that leads to a scene where they meet in a small pub. And
yeah, I do want to point, there's a segment after he says that where it's the sisters just sitting down to talk after that, and Nora specifically makes the point of saying, like, I just hope that he doesn't feel like he has to be a dad now that mom is gone, like he has to step up and do whatever. But over the course of the movie, you get the feeling of like, no, that's exactly what she wants. She's saying it to say if it doesn't happen, whatever, I don't even care. But it's exactly what she would want to happen.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, we've mentioned several times now that he's a director. We don't know that yet. I think when we find that out, we find it out when he's sitting in this pub with her, and she brings up, his films or whatever, and ultimately...
they're doing a retrospective of his whole career now down at some center. Yeah,
because obviously he's saying, how'd the play go, blah, 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 and they're talking about that, and it's like, the reason why he's here is that he's here to offer her a part in his next film. He whips out a script and says that he wrote it for her, and obviously they're very estranged right now, so this is kind of a weird, sudden request, and it's something we don't necessarily get in this scene itself, but in hindsight it tracks with what we learn later, is that when he's making a film with someone, everyone he's involved in making the film with, he's deeply close to them, he talks to them about it, his actors, his cinematographer, whoever, right? But as soon as the film's done, as soon as it's finished, he's not very good at keeping those personal relationships between the films. And as we kind of discover throughout the film, that includes his own family. That includes his own daughters, because one of the things we see right after this is we see, at first we don't even know what's going on. We cut to what looks like a period piece, and we're like, why is there two children running from soldiers? What's going on here?
This was the last moment that I thought, I'm like, oh, we are doing a jumping through the history of this family. Because I think at this point they had also mentioned that she was part of the resistance or whatever. Yeah. I think that was mentioned by this point. So I was like, okay, so we are showing the grandmother's perspective, but nope. It's a movie. Yeah, it's his movie that he made 20, 30 years ago or whatever. And it's, it's the end of this movie. So it eventually cuts to the audience and the credits are rolling. Everyone claps. And Elle Fanning's in the crowd and she's clapping. She's here as a fan, effectively. And it's like, and as we learn later, it's like, okay, so his movies are his way of talking about things that, he's went through, his family's went through. And we know his mother, went through Nazi-occupied Norway and was in the resistance. Now, this doesn't mirror her story. This kid in this movie is much younger than what his mother was during that time period, but he's still talking about these subjects. And part of the idea is that this movie that he's trying to make now, he's getting closer and closer to reality. He's getting closer and closer to what just happened. And he keeps saying it's not about his mother, and we kind of learn that that's true to an extent. It's kind of mixed up with his daughter, but there's a lot of fusing
happening on there. So, but it kind of feels like, okay, his entire career, he's been tackling things that have been related to like his family experience and what he's went through, what he's heard his mum talk about. He's trying to explore those ideas. And not only that, we even find out later that the actress playing the young girl in this movie that he made is his daughter, but not Nora. This is Agnes, who he cast in his own movie as this child. And they bring this up at the Q&A after the movie. And he kind of awkwardly says, oh, you've been, you know, because they say, oh, like your crew is your family. If he even says that, my crew is my family when I'm making a movie. He's like, oh, but that's especially true in this case, right? And he's like, oh, yes, because my daughter's in it. You're right. Yes, of course.
Yeah, it feels like such like, oh, yeah, thanks for reminding me. I definitely wouldn't have remembered that otherwise.
Yeah, and it's like, okay. And again, I want to emphasize that at this point in the movie, I don't think I quite knew that we were going to this point where, no, this is a recurring thing with him. And the idea that he's asking Nora to be in his movie now is, again, his way of trying to, like, connect with her, because it's the only way he knows how to connect with anyone is through making movies. Yeah.
Whereas she just wants, like, she's still bitter over the fact that he essentially walked out on their family, that he disappeared for their entire childhoods. But B, at this point, her mother just died. She is kind of hoping for a genuine father-daughter relationship here, not something that has to hide behind the mask of let's make a movie together.
I think that's what's so interesting about it, is that I think, like, he actually is doing it the way he does this. Like, what he's doing is him trying to reach out, but she sees it as, like, the filmmaking is the thing that kept him away. Like, because I don't think it's so much that he just was I don't think he just abandoned them and like was like, oh, I'm never talking to my daughters again. I think it's like, no, he moved out, and then his career as a filmmaker meant he was always, 5 months in this country, 6 months in that country, so on and so on. And clearly he was very distant throughout that time. So the filmmaking from her perspective is the thing that kept him away and stopped him from being a father. But to him, it's the thing that lets him express himself and lets him actually maybe bond with people, but he's terrible at actually keeping those bonds when he's not making a movie.
Yeah, and I mean, I would honestly say that that's probably the whole reason why she is a stage actress, is this idea that, like, she wanted to be part of that world. She wanted to be part of, like, the acting, the theater, the stuff like that our father was in. But she did develop this sort of deep hatred for the film industry itself, like the idea of the filmmaking, and that's why she's sticking to stage more than anything else.
Yeah, they do mention she was in a series. We never see what that was, though, but it sounds like she was in something like that.
I wasn't sure if that was like a translational thing or what it was, because they just keep on saying the series, and I'm like, is that like part of a play? Is that, was she on TV? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I think it was a TV thing, because they said it's been over for a little bit, so...
Okay, fair enough.
But, regardless, like you say, it's like almost like she went down this path to, like, I don't know, maybe get closer to her father and be in that world, or maybe it's just like a natural thing, but she's taken after him. But either way, like, there's a lot of complex history here that, like, not all of it was clear by this point, but like we're talking about it in hindsight, having seen the rest of the movie, so it's all here. Like, all the seeds are here to feed into all this as the movie goes on.
And that's the other thing, is I think that this movie does a good job of, it never like directly tells you. There's maybe one or two scenes that you could point to and say, like, okay, they're expositing here. They're giving their own personal backstories, whatever. But everything else is very much told through inference and how other characters relate to each other. Like, there's a segment much, much later on where Agnes is basically having to shut down her dad for trying to get her son into the film, trying to have him show.
That is absolutely the next thing we were going to bring up, is that he suddenly is like, I mean, at first it's kind of cute because he's like, hey, Eric, I'll show you some movie magic, and he's like using his phone to show him how to like do some trick shots of, so he looks really tall or whatever. And then it's like, hey, by the way, Agnes, I'd like Eric to be in the film. It's not a lot of lines, but I think he would be perfect for it. And immediately you're like, this is hitting different, knowing that you put her in your movie when she was around this age. Yep. And I think you can see it in her face that she's sort of having mixed feelings about that. And like you say, it leads to this scene where he brings over the script and he's like, hey, you'll have to speak half of it in English. And she's like, Dad, you know what? I don't want him to be in this film. I don't want that to happen. And he just can't quite process it. But I kind of like, I think it's a well-balanced character piece in that I get why they don't want this to happen. They maybe even see it as like a form of exploitation of his family. but I also get from his side of it why he thinks this is a healthy way to like bond with his family. Like he sees this as how he communicates with them. I don't know. Well, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's specifically what she says. She's like, look, when I was on that movie with you, it was fantastic because I was at the center of your world for however long that took. But that made it hurt all the more when the movie was done and you just left again. Yeah. And she points it out, like, I'm not putting my son through that. Like, he's not going to all of a sudden be thrust into this loving embrace of grandpa and then taken away just as quickly.
Yeah, that's probably the most telling part of it, actually, and it's why Agnes ends up being such a pivotal character in part, but also because of the scene she has with Nora, where the sisterly bond really comes out. But it's a really telling moment. Is like, hey, do you know how much it hurt when you weren't as enthusiastic and you weren't around me as much, and it was like I didn't exist anymore. Like, I don't want, like, I mean, yeah, maybe you'll die soon and like you won't have to feel that bad about it, but like, you know, that isn't going to make you feel that much better. So no, it's the question of like, do you want a like really, really great relationship for a short amount of time, or do you want a good relationship for a long time? And I think that, you know, he thinks that having a great relationship in these short bursts is like, yeah, no, that's fantastic. Like, because that's what kind of movie making is in its own way, is like you get yourself attached to this project, you do it, and then eventually it ends and you move on to the next thing, but you're happy to have that thing. Whereas the rest of them are like, no, we just want a dad. Like, we want something that's going to be around forever and is constantly evolving and changing. But I think you can understand why he's kind of become that way, because, you know, and this is something we've not spoken about yet, but his mother killed herself when he was young. Yep. So this idea that at any time what he gets used to might go away means that he intentionally doesn't let anything be long lasting. It's like, no, he goes into everything with this idea. No, we'll be really close for like 6 months and then that's it. Like, you know, I'm not too attached. I can move on and it's not a big deal then when something, you know, if someone leaves or dies or whatever. So yeah, like that part of it is good.
Yeah, which we should probably bring up how he, I don't want to say love bombs because that has its own connotations, but how quickly he gets attached to Elle Fanning's character of Rachel. So yeah, at the premiere, she's in the audience. Well, she invites him for a dinner.
It's not a premiere. It's the old movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
the showing, whatever it is. She's in the audience. She's touched by the production. She invites him out to a dinner with her little entourage group, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think what I liked about this entourage, though, you could tell that she wanted to get away from them, and part of why she likes Stellan Skarsgård's character, Gustav, is because he like basically just like gets her away from them as quickly as possible at one point. A couple of times
manufactures the distance. He's like, oh nope, she's leaving, nothing you can do. Bye.
She wants to be an actress, but they're like, no, you're a star, you have to be on social media talking about this and this and blah blah blah. It's just like, you know.
Yeah, but essentially it very quickly pivots after they have a night of just talking, and she basically says that she does want more than that. That he, after he's had his daughter decline, offers the role to her. And what it transpires very quickly is basically him trying to make this happen in any way possible. He believes that it's the best thing to happen. He's convinced himself of that. But you see very slowly over the course of this relationship how he's kind of like pushing her to take on more aspects of what his daughter provided, but also quickly realizing that she doesn't have the same capabilities that his daughter does. And so there's kind of this limitation in his head where it's just not working and shaping out the way that he wanted it to.
Yeah, and she even notices that. Like, she notices, oh, you had me dye my hair brunette so that I'd look more like your daughter, and this feels like it was written for her. And she even goes to Nora at one point and says, hey, that movie was written for you. Why did you turn it down? Like, and even tries to like convince her to take it. So she's very like, you know, she doesn't get like, there's not like some big like fight or something when it all comes out in the open. She's very reserved and she's very understanding and tries to talk to him about it. And ultimately he does kind of agree later on in the movie of the way things are going. But it is a personal movie, and he's planning on making it in the house, you know, where he grew up, and he talks about how, oh yeah, the movie's going to end, and he describes the ending of the movie, and he's talking her through it, and it's like, hey, you're going to go behind here, and this is where you're going to hang yourself, and you're going to use this stool. And there's a little joke element here where he says, oh, that stool's the stool that she used to like get up there to do it, and she gets really like upset and like shocked. And at this point, Agnes is around like grabbing some stuff, and she's like, and in Norwegian, she's like, wait, you bought that stool at IKEA like 5 years ago. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they just share a laugh together. They're like, yeah, well, you know, anything to get the performance out of her, I guess.
Yeah, he's just pushing her a little bit. And
I do really like that sequence where he's describing the end of the movie, the oneer, where he walks us through like step by step. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what we're doing, and everything else going on there.
And it pays off, obviously, at the end.
Yeah. It's, you realize it so quickly. You're like, oh, okay. And there are differences. There are big changes, but we'll get to those. But the thing that I like so much about it is that as they're going through the oneer here, she kind of picks up. She's, you know, they explicitly say like, oh yeah, you know, my mother used the stool here, whatever. And she's picking up on the idea of like, this is a deeply personal film. This is whatever. But he also keeps on reiterating the fact of like, the character in the movie is not my mother. He specifically says that over and over again, which feels like in the beginning of the movie, he's kind of just trying to do like a self-distancing of like, hey, don't worry, like the character's going to be whatever you make it. It's going to be something else entirely. But then we learn over time that it is because it's the fusion between the mother and his daughter instead.
It kind of becomes apparent that it's almost like a fear that he has that Nora is going to be more like his mother. And that makes the realization that we don't find out until Agnes has read the script and talks to Nora about it, that Nora did try and kill herself once. And they never told her dad about it. And she even says, hey, Agnes, did you tell dad about this? And she's like, no. And I thought the same thing when I read that scene. Is like, it's like he knew. It's like he was there. And he like... And it's almost this realization that in his own way, he does deeply understand his daughters, which is something that... Because Nora even accuses him at one point in a previous scene, like, you don't know who we are. You don't know us at all. And then she reads the script and it's like he was in a room for a thing that happened that he was never there for. He does know us way better than I gave him credit for. And it's like a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. It's again, that generational trauma idea where we get the comparisons of how similar Nora is to her grandmother, which she never met. But also we find out that he sees a lot of himself in her. So whatever this sort of anger, depression, sadness, whatever it is that's there, it is something that is inside of all of them, at least within these first three. And then it is up until Agnes where it feels like something finally changed. Something finally is different here. And we're able to view this in a different light.
Yeah. And again, the difference that seems to be from their heart to heart is that she had Nora sort of being the bigger sister, like almost shielding her from the worst of it to give her like more of a fighting chance of being normal. And I say that loosely. I don't mean that in a like the others are not normal. They're all normal. These are all very flawed human beings, but just in the sense of the specific trauma that they're kind of still dealing with.
And that's the thing, is that it wasn't even so much of like, you know, Nora provided like the father figure aspect that the dad was missing. No, she acted as a mother as well, because their mother, as much as has been a background character, was also not perfect in her own right. She had good days and bad days, and it was whenever she was missing from the fray that Nora stepped in and kind of filled that sort of tenderness role that was needed. Yeah,
and it kind of messed her up that she had to fill that role, but what she's maybe not realized until Agnes has this heart-to-heart with her near the end of the movie is that by doing that, it meant that Agnes didn't, and Agnes maybe got to be a little healthier as a result, because Agnes was had this older figure looking out for her in a way that Nora didn't. And so there's kind of a sweet dynamic there, and it's something that like I'm recognizing here. I'm an only child. I can't relate to any of that, but I appreciate the ideas, and I'm kind of recognizing them through the writing. So that's good stuff. So to talk a bit more about the backstory of the grandmother, is it obviously it talks about how she was taken in as a prisoner by the Nazis because she was a resistance fighter, and so on.
She did protests and everything else, so she was out there.
So they obviously mentioned that, and we see other flashbacks to, like, say, the 90s, where they've got a clip of Stellan Skarsgård in some talk show that they obviously just got from the archive, and just it's relevant enough. It sounds like he's talking about stuff that he would as a director.
They specifically, just to fill in a little bit of that gap, they show, I think they said the mom was taken by the Nazis for 2 years. She got out. She never really talked about it. She kept it very under her wraps. Eventually, of course, she killed herself. And then her sister inherited the house and turned it into kind of like a 60s party house sort of thing. Like there was constantly loud music and everything like that. And
and teenage Gustav, Stellan Skarsgård, he'd be like visiting his aunt, and like all of her like hippie friends would just like sunbathe topless, and he'd be like just ogling the boobs and whatnot.
Which, I mean, that just screams Norway to me, but yes, fair enough. And then eventually he inherited the house. They showed that he did some renovations. He did make some major changes to the interior of the house at that point, kind of covering up and painting things and making it his own. But then, you see a bunch of like interviews with him as a director, doing whatever. And I believe the order of events was he met Nora's mother. They had Nora, and then it wasn't until like a few months or years later that they got married, and then they had
no. They mentioned specifically they got married a couple of months before she was born. So she got pregnant before they got married. But yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
And that's all there. But this leads to something interesting where Agnes isn't working in the industry. And when she first meets Elle Fanning's character, Elle Fanning's like, "Oh, are you in the industry as well?" And she's like, "No, I did a little as a kid, but I do sometimes help as a researcher because that's what I do. I'm a historian, and so on." And there's a sequence where, and it does this a few times in the movie, where it cuts to something, like we were talking about the end of his old movie, where we're like, wait, why are we doing, like, we're in like wartime, what's happening? It cuts to like a library or something, and there's a woman like getting research out and like sort of just arranging some documents and books that are relevant to what turns out to be a request that Agnes has made. She wants to look at certain documentation and whatnot, and it ends up being her looking through basically the accounts of her grandmother. Once, the Nazi regime was taken out of Norway at the end of World War II, her grandmother had given statements about, this is how we were treated at the prison camp and things like that. And it describes the torture that she went through. And there's like photographs of, not obviously what happened, but like of reenactments to show what type of torture was being used on the people who were there and how horrific it was. And she's kind of crying and she's looking at all this. And this is where I was really talking about this idea of how different she is from Nora, because Nora is like, hiding behind like the art and, almost too scared to confront the feelings and things like that. Whereas Agnes is like, no, I'm going to therapeutically look at this material. I'm going to understand exactly what she went through. I want to understand who she was, the horrors that she faced, and really face it head on.
It's viewing it without the metaphor. It's viewing it without this idea of like, oh, it's happening to an actress, or oh, it's happening to someone in a story. Like, this is the very dry, very straightforward police account of what happened to her. Like, this is as straightforward as it gets, and she's taking it in there, and it feels like it is somewhat therapeutic, like you said, of she's relating herself to it but not drowning in it.
Yeah, and it's after she has the argument with Stellan Skarsgård about the son being in the movie. The script is still sitting there on the table, and she basically just gets tempted to read it, and she does. She's up all night, she's brushing her teeth reading it, she's lying in bed reading it, and she finishes it, and it's when she goes to the heart-to-heart with Nora that she says, hey, there's these things in here, read this segment, and that makes Nora cry, and it's like she ends up reading the whole thing, and they talk about how there's these like really personal moments in it, and so on. It's almost kind of like, it feels like Stellan Skarsgård, now that he's getting older, like the character that is, obviously, it's almost like his work is almost trying to merge the two sisters together in a way, like, and like in terms of how they tackle these things, where it's still through art, but it's getting closer and closer to what's really happened. Like, his first film that we saw a glimpse of was like, oh, it's just a character in World War II running from the Nazis. It's kind of like, it's touching on the ideas of what his mother went through, but it's not the actual events. But then you get to this film, and it's like, no, she is going to do this to herself the exact same way that his mother did. He wants to film it in the house that he grew up in. It's getting closer and closer, and it's almost like after the sequence, the big ending of the movie is we cut to Nora with Eric, as if at first I thought, is she babysitting Eric? And then I'm like, oh no, wait a minute. This is the ending. This is the ending of the movie that Skarsgård described.
Right.
She's in the movie.
As soon as she walks him over to the door and he leaves, and like the camera doesn't cut, it's all done as a oneer. I'm like, okay, here we go.
And then you notice through the window, it's just like a blue backdrop. It's not a real outside. And you realize, they've agreed to not do it in the house. Like, they're doing it on a set. They've made a set, so it's a little bit less personal.
Yes, I didn't immediately read that as a set though, because there is a shot right beforehand where we show that the house is being renovated again. And I just took that as maybe they were just like putting up the sheets to be able to control the lighting. Like, you know, with an outdoor lighting, you got to be able to control it a little bit.
Yeah, but they reveal at the end that it is definitely a set.
Yeah, they reveal at the very end it is, yeah. But as the scene is continuing on, I'm like, this still looks like the house to me.
It's almost like the daughter's like, no, it's too raw to do it there, but she's obviously Nora's agreed to be in the movie, and it's almost like she's bonding with her father. And the end of the movie is like, you know, she goes through the door, because as he described earlier, we wouldn't see the actual death happen, we'd just see the door shut. So she shuts the door, and it cuts to a shot of her on the other side, and she just sort of stands there waiting until eventually he yells cut, because, you know, the sound effect of the still knocking over will be added in post. Yeah. We really need to do that in the moment. And then like everyone sort of is like, oh, that's a wrap, and everyone's sort of clapping, and the movie ends with her and him kind of like just sharing a moment, looking at each other, but they don't embrace. There's barely even a smile. It's just a sort of understanding that we have just done this together. We have just shared this to sort of express ourselves to each other, but we're not going to run and hug like a normal daughter and father might. We're not going to suddenly be like talk like everyone else does. We're just both understanding that we've both expressed ourselves in the way that we know how, and we both understand that that's what we're doing now, as opposed to before where there was almost like, I won't call it a misunderstanding, but a lot of the conflict came from, you know, we don't understand that this is him trying to express himself to her, and she's like reading that as him like avoiding actually being a real father. It's like almost like seeing him on his terms. And I know I've skipped over some things. Like he has like a near death moment at one point where he's in hospital, and that. Well,
that's part of a much larger plot that, I definitely want to touch on. But no, I agree with you, but I also want to just make sure we make it clear with this idea of the generational trauma. I think having it put on a set and also cutting to her in the room, just standing there, like not actually continuing in with the action, just standing there and doing that. I think both of those speak to the idea of healing this generational trauma of like constantly these two, whether they know it or not, have been putting themselves through this experience over and over and over again. It's been something that impacts them. So now that they are able to do it, but they do it in a controlled environment and they don't see it all the way to fruition, I think is just metaphorically speaking to that idea of, no, this is how we deal with it in a healthier way. Maybe not still the most healthy way, but it's healthier than what we've been doing. It's
healthier, and they both understand what they're doing now, as opposed to like before, where it was like there was a misunderstanding about what one person was trying to do with the other, and it clashing with the ideas of like her wanting a father, but realizing, no, this is him trying to be a father. This is how he knows how to do it, kind of thing. So
the other aspect that I want to bring up here is his arc, more or less, not even an arc, but just an aspect of his storyline, is how he is aging, how this opens up more or less with a retrospective of all of his works. And it is done in this idea of, you know, here's your career. You're done now. You've done what you need to do. But then the guy does specifically point out a question of, do we have more? Like, are you going to make more movies in the future? And he's like, well, here's hoping. And it feels like this project, this one that is so deeply personal to him, is kind of him wanting to not only get back into it, but also just make a final mark, say something in the end, say like, I'm not out yet, I'm not doing whatever, get back into things. And I feel like that makes so much more sense when you then analyze how much of control, how much he's ceding in terms of getting this movie made. Like, he wrote this specifically for his daughter, but when his daughter doesn't want to do it, he gives it up to someone else. He gives it to this other actress. There's a segment where he has a director of photography in mind that has to be behind the camera. There's no other options.
Yeah, presumably that's the guy that he worked with in these past, because this is something that they do mention as well, is that he's not made a narrative feature film in like a decade or two. Like, he's been doing some documentaries and other stuff, but his actual like filmmaking of like traditional film it's been a big gap. And he's like, no, I want this guy. And his like agent or whoever he is like, he's kind of old. He's like, he's the same age as us. What could go wrong? And he goes to visit him on his own. And the guy's enthusiastic. Yeah, I read the script. It's great. I want to do this with you. I want to do one last film with you. And then he goes to sit up, and he's got a walking stick, and he really struggles to get to his feet, and he's walking very slow. And it's like, oh, you're supposed to be the guy like moving the camera and operating the lights, and you know, it's like, I don't know if you're physically able to do this. And he kind of has to. And this scene does two things. One is him awkwardly being like, I have to talk to some others. Netflix are behind this, and they want to talk to like other, DOPs, and and it's kind of, and the guy kind of can kind of feel like he knows, like, oh, you're having second thoughts because you don't think I can do it. But he doesn't say that out loud, but you can see it on his face. So there's that, and that obviously adds to the idea that Skarsgård himself is feeling like he's getting too old, and maybe he's not got anything to offer.
But it also might be his last piece, regardless.
Yeah, but it also furthers that idea of he reiterates here is like, oh, I'm sorry I've not kept in touch. Like I'm terrible at doing that between movies. So it's like, oh no, this is with everyone. It's not just these kids. Like,
oh yeah. But then like I said, that reinforces the idea of he sees how other people his age are frail, are aging out, and he's like, this movie has to be made. Like, I have to get this done. So he's willing to make all these different concessions to get it made. And that is kind of Elle Fanning's role of the plot, kind of where she comes in, because she is her own character. She does a good job here. But when she comes to realize that she's not right for this role, that she is kind of just being square pegged, forced into a round hole here, she steps up and has a conversation with him and says, like, look, I'm not the one for this. I don't know, like, I'm happy you think I can do it, but I just don't think I'm going to be the right fit here. You deserve to have your project made the way that you want it to be made. And that ultimately pretty much leads into the third act where, as you said before, he does have a history of drinking heavily at nights. He has one too many drinks, and he essentially is found unconscious out in the yard one night and has to be brought into the hospital. And that's after the sisters have read the script. They're all kind of more united as a family here, wanting to come together, and it leads into a better outcome. And there's a little jokey element at the end of that where they go to the hospital, and when they're like walking back into the room where he is, they sort of stop because they hear him trying to flirt with the nurse, where he's like, it's such a beautiful smile, and they just start laughing because they're like, he's still him. And it's almost like something earlier on they were giving, like, I mean, Norris especially was like, oh, you say you wouldn't date an actress, but you were screwing around with them, maybe even implying you were doing that while you were still with her mother, kind of thing. Like there was some some space in that comment, and it's kind of like, oh no, he's still him, like he's not gone yet. Maybe we should, like, and maybe that's further reasons why, what, I will make this film with him, not just because I understand why he's doing it now and I understand the content and he understands me better than I thought he did, but also because, he's not going to be around that much longer. I should maybe take this time while he's still him, while he's still acting like him, while he still sounds like him, to have that experience. And, it's like, there's some concessions made by everyone, I guess, and to an extent, but they're all kind of really understandable. Like, oh, I understand why I'm making these concessions now, and I'm not just... Yeah, that's the bit, is that the house itself is, I don't want to say Victorian, but it's older. You feel the age of this house. You feel like nothing has been updated it since Skarsgård did whatever he did in probably like the 70s. Like, it's all just that same style. And as we move out of the hospital and we move into this final sequence, you see them modernizing the house. You see them doing updates. You see them making it a much more newer state to it. And it doesn't feel... Maybe
to be sold, it looked like it was getting really cleaned up for that.
Yeah,
to me.
I was thinking that, but we never get any sort of payoff to that. But yes, it's entirely possible. But then the idea of it comes back to, again, it's a concession that he's making, that he's filming on a set, but he also is allowed... We see the director of photography that he passed over, the frail guy.
Yeah, he's there. He's sitting in the chair next to him, yeah.
So it feels a lot more like, yes, he made it modern instead of set back in like the 50s as it was supposed to be, but he got a lot more out of it to be able to make this film. And it feels like that modernizing of the house is also related to that overcoming the generational trauma, like being able to put that to bed, saying this was the old stuff. We don't have to hold on to it. We can just let it go.
It also feels like he got to make the movie with all the people he wanted to. He got his daughter, he got his grandson, he got his DOP. Like it's almost like the people were more important than the other things that he was being like a stickler for before.
Yes.
Yes. So there's like a nice element to that. Yeah. So no, it's like, it's one of those endings where it's like not hitting you over the head with its final points, but if you're paying attention, you're thinking about what it means and like what they've actually, how they've changed by the end of the movie. It does make a lot of sense, and the arcs are complete for all three characters, all three lead characters, and I'm including the sister Agnes in that, because she's agreed to let her son do this because she understands maybe the perspective, but now that she understands it, maybe she'll be able to, like, if her son does feel like things are weird after they've made the movie, she has the experience and understanding now to maybe explain to him why things are the way they are, and you know, help her son understand what his grandfather is like, and you know.
Yeah. So. There was a segment where I think it was the grandson's birthday, and
oh yeah,
good old grandpa.
He brings over some arty films on DVD as a present. And one was the piano teacher, but I'm like, these are not kids movies. This is the wrong audience for this. Nice, I appreciate the attempt, but
I looked up one of them. And I scrolled down to like the parents guide on IMDb, and it was just like sex and nudity, severe, violence, severe. I'm like, he's 9. He's 9 years old.
Yeah. Also, he's like, oh, Monica Bellucci's in this one. It's almost like, that'll make you grow up fast. Looking at Monica Bellucci.
Yep. Especially that one. That one, the Monica Bellucci one, that was the one with all the severe marks. And I was like, Jesus, how did you think it was like, where did this come from? And I looked at director was Gaspar Noé, and I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I was watching R-rated stuff when I was that age for sure, but probably not something. I imagine the nudity in like a foreign film was probably a lot more extreme than what I was seeing.
Look, I cannot repeat what the parents' guide said. It is a lot.
Oh,
so
I believe you.
Like even by European standards, it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they'll put them in a. Although I was thinking, come on, it's 2025 here, like in the movie, like you get DVDs. Surely you respect a higher quality, my man.
That's just once again showing how he has not modernized. He has no idea what a Blu-ray is.
Or maybe it shows that he didn't go out and buy these; he just grabbed them off his old shelf of movies.
That's possible. Well. They also have specifically that one little sequence where they're being interviewed about this movie before they do any pre-production, which is insane to me. But as they're doing it, they say, oh, is it going to be in theaters? It's distributed by Netflix. Are you going to get a theater run? And he's like, yeah, of course. Like, how else would you watch the movie? And someone else, one of his other people who's like part of this squad that's all behind getting it made, he is to be the one that steps in being like, oh, we're still negotiating, we're still figuring out what's up. And you can see his face kind of like drop for a second of like, is this not going to be in theaters? Am I not going to get my movie up on screen? Yeah,
he's disgusted by the idea that it won't be in cinemas. It's which I get. It's oh, and again, that's another generational thing of like, he's, you know, there's even a scene where he's like, how is my grandson going to be looking at that tablet all day? Like, there's, you know, just these little things that are like, like things have changed, and there's kind of a little bit of that clash there between the generations.
So I mean, I feel we've completely glossed over Nora's story. It intersects so deeply with her dad's, but I do feel she has aspects of her own.
I mean, yeah, like there's a whole thing where she's dating this guy who she works with, but it turns out that he's married, and they mention that, and they kind of joke about it. But later, when it turns out he's getting a divorce, because she's out, it's like a day with colleagues. They're out for a picnic or whatever. They're out hiking, and someone else mentions that he's getting divorced, and she clearly did not know, and she looks very miffed that she's not been told. And later on, when they're hiking again, she goes to kiss him, and she's like, "Hey, we don't have to hide anything anymore." And he just kind of like makes it kind of clear without saying it. He's like, "Yeah, we're not going to be I was happy having a fling, but like we're not going to be like a couple now. Like that's not what this is." And walks away.
I'm at a point where I need to reevaluate my whole life, and I don't know if you'll be a part of it.
Yeah, and this ties into like the dad at one point saying to her that, "Oh, you know, you're going to be alone forever." Like, you know, kind of like try to like provoke her into looking for, you know, to settle down, maybe have a kid or something. You know, so
yeah, I will say during that initial conversation when we see them having their fling, she even makes the point of, you know, I'm glad that you're married, because then we don't have to worry about that sort of deeper connection, anything like that. And it feels like the same sort of way that her father views those sort of relationships. Like, this is all temporary. We don't have to make any of these long forming connections, anything like that. But then when one finally does present itself of saying like, hey, we can take things a little deeper, she's immediately shut down, and you just see her like drop. Like, there's no way. She clearly wanted something more there, even if like her mind is saying, don't do it, don't get more involved.
I mean, I don't even know if it's so much that she wanted it beforehand. I think it's just like once it's an option, it's like, well, obviously that's a thing we should discuss. And the fact that he just is like, no, obviously not, just walks away. I think it's like that realization of like, oh no, I actually don't have anything permanent. Like I am alone right now. Like I was sort of tricking myself into thinking I wasn't, but I am alone. And it's a little self-inflicted. I mean, even like later when the sister does bring over the script, it's like, hey, you've been dodging my calls for the past, little while, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that all specifically happens. So after that whole thing and her dad saying, I see a lot of myself in you, she's kind of at a major low there. She does the premiere. She has a little bit of a reconcile with her dad, just a tiny little bit. They kind of just meet up and talk briefly. And she's simultaneously expecting and not expecting him to show up to the premiere. She wants him to, but she's not expecting him to.
And the sister was going to like bring him with. Yeah. It's like, hey, we'll all go to the premiere together. And he's like, oh no, I'll go myself because I need to go straight from the office or something like that. Yeah. And then he just doesn't show up to her new premiere. And later on, he justifies it saying like, oh, she didn't want me there anyway. Like, we've got all of our tiffs between us. And the sister's just like, God, you're such an idiot. But yeah, at that point, we see that she's basically hit her all-time low where she, just out of sheer depression, has to cancel a performance. She's like, I never do this. I perform all sick, but like, I just can't go on today. Yeah, that's right before, or I don't know if it's the same day, but like that, in the layout of the movie, it's right before the sister comes over with the script. Like, that's the last time we see her before that hams. Yep. Yeah. No, it's like, clearly she is at this kind of just like midlife crisis level of part of her story. Until the sister, and the sister heart to heart, we've talked a lot about what comes out of it, but it is a really touching scene where like her younger sister Agnes tells her how much like she meant to her and why it's important that she was there, and they end up like hugging and crying on the bed together. It's very, 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 very vulnerable, very delicate. I also really like, because this is before we found out that there was a suicide attempt. Like it happens during this scene that we heard that Nora had a suicide attempt. Yeah, I think it's before they start hugging and crying, but it's this scene that we find that out. Yeah. I really like that all up in the movie up until this point, you see Nora as sort of this wreck. You see her as someone who does not have her life together, whereas Agnes feels a lot more put together, and she does feel kind of a bit motherly, a bit more of like taking care of things for Nora. Even leading up to the sequence, as Nora's reading the script, she's going around and picking up all like the dirty plates and napkins and stuff like that from around Nora's apartment. She starts cleaning her apartment while she's reading the script. Yeah. So you have this whole thing where it's like, okay, she's the one taking care of Nora, but then you get the reveal of the suicide attempt and how it is kind of implied that that's where the sister stepped up. That's where she really came to care for Nora and was able to start doing that. And then we get the reveal right afterwards that before that point, it seemed that Nora was always the one being the motherly figure, and she just kind of crashed out. She was someone who was, she wasn't taking care of herself. She was so focused on taking care of the sister, and that's what allowed the sister to get to such a good point here. So I like that subtle shift where the audience is led to believe that Nora could never take care of herself, was never in this control position in her entire life. But in reality, she was always just using that to help her sister out, and that's what allowed her to succeed. Yeah. So yeah, and that's why I was saying like that final scene where it's they're finishing off that movie and you realize they've made it. It's like it caps off the arc for all three of these characters because, like, he's making the movie, she's agreed to be in it, she's Agnes has agreed for her son to be in it. Like it's like they've set everything up in such a way that one simple scene will just tie a bow in everything right at the very end, which is very economical and very elegant storytelling. Yes. There are two sequences, one not so much related to Nora, but two sequences I wanted to bring up. The first of which is Nora's, I believe it's just after she is broken up with by the guy. They have a sequence where she enters into a room. We don't see a lot. It's kind of a black background. And she just breaks down. She starts sobbing. She falls down to the ground. And it's a long sequence. We follow her through the whole gambit of emotions. And then at the very end, it zooms out. And we see that this was all actually just a black box theater with just the door, a bed, and like a chair. And she is, to some extent, putting on a performance here. I have to assume, metaphorically, this is like literally the driving force of hiding behind the art
and processing your emotions that way. Like, there's no other way I could possibly read it beyond that.
Yeah, no. I mean, they intentionally kind of hold in a close-up so you can't really get a sense of the surroundings, and then it pulls back. You're like, oh no, this is her rehearsing or, doing some small performance, whatever it is.
Yeah, but it still feels real. It still feels like she's pulling from a real space. The other one, I don't even know if you call it a sequence, but there is a bit of, pretty much when the third act hits, where we do this face-changing lighting thing. I don't know how best you would describe it.
It's more of an interstitial, I guess, when it's like they're both at their the peaks of their emotional arcs, I guess we'll call it.
Yes.
And it does this thing where it uses like a light effect going across their face, and it sort of keeps transitioning from Stellan Skarsgård back to Nora, back again. And it's just... I
think Agnes is in there too, honestly.
Oh, really? Maybe she is. But it's a very stylized moment of like just sort of showing them all as one person effectively. Yeah, it's an okay little moment. I think it's one of those things where I think you'll either like it or dislike it, just depending on how you feel about little artsy touches to a movie, because it's very much just there to kind of like give you a bit of flavor before it goes into the rest of the story.
Yeah, I like it in concept, but I do think that certain times, like no one is staying perfectly still. There's like a little bit of movement to them every time they appear and disappear, and sometimes the faces really don't align, and that throws me off a little bit. And that's just visually, like stylistically, metaphorically, I think it's a strong point, but visually there's just a little bit I think could have made done like blending the faces a bit better together between each rotation.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, I think I'd have liked it more if it was like a motif that was set up earlier, and like, like maybe we like saw each of their faces individually earlier, so it meant more when they started merging them here or something. It was kind of on its own here, as opposed to say the history parts of the movie where the narration comes in, where that was a running motif. So every time it started up, it felt like, oh, we're coming back to this, and it felt like almost comforting to go back to it whenever it did pop back up again.
Yeah. There is one other thing that I remembered from the beginning as we were getting the perspective from the house. And that is that perspective ended by saying that there was basically a flaw, something in the foundation of the house, and you just see this crack going down from like the concrete all the way up through the walls and all that. And I feel like that is kind of a mission statement. That's kind of a thing of like, if the house is representing this family, that there was something traumatic, something deep within their history that was not dealt with, and if left to its own devices would crumble everything down.
Yeah, this idea that, and we were kind of going back to the grandmother is kind of the people version of this, but there's a fault at the origin that still, the cracks are still rippling all these years later. Yeah, so it's simple enough metaphor-wise, but it's visually very good, so... and the narration here talks about how, Nora described it as if the house was falling through space, and, this house is sinking, but it's going so slow that their time in the house is just like a blip in midair as it's sinking. I don't know, it was like, okay, it's kind of a little bit artsy-fartsy with the dialogue, but I didn't dislike it. I was kind of into it.
That's even the same sort of thing where like they say, okay, the final shot of this movie is going to be this oneer, and then we find out the final shot of the movie is essentially this oneer. But also the bit where she's showing the script to Nora, where Agnes is showing it, she's like, I want you to read this bit here. Don't mind that it's a little bit overwritten.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it feels like you are just poking fun at yourself a little. That's why I'm saying I feel like this movie is to some extent personal. I don't think this is biographical. I don't think this is something that like, I already forgot the Joachim Trier, there's his name. I don't think this is something that he actually went through or anything like that, but it does feel like there are some very deep personal connections that can be made here, because it is just reflecting on that. It's reflecting in such a meta context as well that I can't help but think there is something there. Yeah.
I think anytime a filmmaker makes a movie about a filmmaker, there's definitely going to be some... Like, if not the characters themselves, there's going to be some idea of exploration of how we use art in a way that probably is quite personal. And that's what we're talking about here, is this idea of overrating something, and but it's still kind of having some truth in there, regardless. All right, David, what are you rating Sentimental Value out of 10?
I would love to give a little back and forth of why exactly, but this is more gut feeling than anything else. I feel I've justified it for the rest of the review. I think this one's an 8.5. I think it's a very solid watch. I really enjoyed all the character work, everything else going into there. More so in reference to Train Dreams, I gave that one an 8, and this does feel better than Train Dreams. I think, without question, it is above that. So 8.5 feels pretty steady for me.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely like this more than Train Dreams. I'm thinking just an 8. I'm thinking it's great. I don't know how much rewatch potential it has for me. I don't know if it hit that, like, because I think with a movie like this, if it really hits my emotions and like I feel really touched by it becomes like a favorite, and it's one that I'll want to revisit. Right. I think it's right on that line where I'm like, I really think the character work's great. I really like the themes and the ideas that it hits. I just don't know if it tips over into, oh, this is one of my favorites because it really moved me. Like, I really like everything about it, but it's maybe just not a favorite.
This is one of those ones that strikes me as just slightly the wrong demographic. I could see people who come from this sort of generational trauma, people who have strained relationships with like their fathers or their siblings or whatever. They're going to see this and it's going to hit such a note that it's going to just resonate all the way to the bone. But I consider myself lucky. I don't have those things. So it is kind of, from an outsider looking in, I can recognize the quality of it, but I don't feel that deep resonance either. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's great. I just, I think it's not reaching above that for me. So I'm just going to say 8 out of 10. But, very good movie. Happy we checked it out. And, again, fleshing out our cinema awareness for 2025 a little bit.
Does this movie make the cut?
Yeah, it makes the cut.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's
pretty straightforward.
Nice and simple. Yep, makes the cut. So there we go. Next time on the show, next week, we'll be looking at our next 2025 film, and that is going to be a movie called Sorry Baby. So we will check out that next week.
All right. Should I do a preemptive Google, or should I go in totally blind?
Go in blind. That's way more fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Go in cold.
I'll just look at the runtime. Hour 45. I could do that. That's easy.
You're just worried you're getting hit with another 3-hour movie. That's just all you're concerned about.
I'm constantly going to be worried about that until we're done.
No, Sorry Baby is next week. So let us know what you thought of this movie in the comments and all that. But you can support the show by supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, or via YouTube membership. You get access to the ratings rundowns, like a little bonus segment for every episode that we do now. You get access to Extra Reels, which is a review show we do once a month where we review some of the worst movies ever made. So if that sounds like a fun time and you want to hear us talk about Underdog or, the films of Neil Breen or other just shit-tastic movies, you can do that with that. But yes, thanks to everyone who already supports us. It does make all this possible. Check out the other movie podcasts on Mail Fuzz Movies if you haven't checked them out. But that is us. So thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.